we are going to get started. Are you ready for my rap? Are you ready for my rap? Here we go. Ask Carol anything, don't hold back. Real conversations on the right track. Real impact, no fluff, just fact. Ask Carol anything. I love it. I love it. This is amazing. Thank you again for joining us. Today we have our family attorney, Tamara Sharp. She is amazing. We have a treat lineup. She is a family attorney. Start putting your questions in the chat. We're gonna get through all our questions in this 1 hour. So start putting your questions in the chat. Thank you everyone for joining in. So, who is Tamara Sharp? Let's find out. Tamara Sharp, she is a family attorney based out of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And I'm just going to go ahead and read. Is everyone seeing me okay? Just put a thumbs up, put a heart. I'm looking a little blurry on my end. Can everyone see me okay? Yes? Perfect. Okay, so we are going to get started. So, Tamara Sharp, who exactly is Tamara Sharp? I'll tell you in 2 seconds. Tamara Sharp Esquire is a sole owner of Sharp Legal Services LLC, representing families in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. She graduated from Penn State University in 2012, and she received her Juris Doctorate from Drexel University Thomas R. Klein School of Law in 2015. Ms. Sharp has extensive experience in several areas of family law, including restraining orders, divorce, custody cases since 2017. Ms. Sharp has been a law guardian representing children in abuse and neglect cases in New Jersey. Ms. Sharp litigates matters in different counties throughout New Jersey and Pennsylvania and has worked as of counsel to several prominent attorneys, prioritizing the best interest of the children and safety of the family. Ms. Sharp deeply cares about her clients and works diligently to provide the counsel they need. Wow. That was a mouthful. And that was the amazing Tamara Sharp. So we are going to bring her on without further ado. Miss Sharp, welcome to the Ask Carol Talk Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. So we just heard who you are, a family attorney. So what made you chose to be an attorney, and what made you chose family law?
I think growing up, a lot of people said I like to argue. So that was
Good
one
argument.
thing. But I also always wanted to help out children. That's always been a good place in my heart, as well as helping out families. So I wanted to do something professional. And I also ran into a really good professor in college who kind of thwarted me into wanting to be a family law attorney.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And without further ado, we have a 1 hour pack of information. So start putting your questions in the chat for Miss Sharp. She is going to try and get through all your questions the best she can. But without further ado, Miss Sharp, take it away. Tell us what we need to know about family law.
Yes. All right.
No
Can you
worries at
see it?
all.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So family law is very state specific, just to give you a general overview. Oh wait, sorry. Did it go away? Sorry. So with family law, there are several areas of family law that encompass it. There's custody support, which includes child and spousal support. There's also divorce, domestic violence, which is restraining orders, and adoption. I'm going to talk about the first couple. Adoption, I don't really handle as much, but it is a part of family law.
Okay.
So with custody, there are two types of custody. There is legal custody and there's physical custody. Legal custody is generally making any major decisions for the child, which includes educational, medical, and any religious ideals. With legal custody, there's either two types of it. It could be shared or sole. Generally, if there's two parents involved, it's just shared. The only time it's really sole is if there's one parent that's either incapacitated or not around, and there's only one parent that's there to make those decisions. And then there's physical custody, which is having the child physically. With physical, there's a wide variety of how physical custody could be. It can be shared, which it can be 50-50. There's some people that have like a week on, week off parenting schedule. It can be primary and partial, where one parent has most of the time, the other parent maybe only has weekend time. And then there's again sole, where one parent has the child the entire time. And then we can move on to support. Before I move on to support, anybody have any questions with custody?
Yeah, start putting your questions in the chat.
So with support, as I said, there's two types of support. There can be child support and spousal support. Child support is one misconception that a lot of people have, is that child support is supposed to go directly to the child. It is support for the child. It is support for the other parent to be able to take care of the child. When they do support calculations, they take both parents' income, because the idea is that both parents are supporting the child. It really depends on where the child is living and where the support is going to be going. Then there is spousal support. Spousal support is a support that is given in the meantime before a divorce is finalized. So it's usually when the parties are separated and they're leading up to a divorce. And then once they're divorced, of course, there's alimony. Then here comes divorce. Divorce is very tricky.
That's a big word, Miss Sharp.
Divorce is very, very, very tricky. It is um, sometimes it can be with no children. Sometimes it is with children. Sometimes there are assets and there's sometimes not. It really depends on the people, in my experience. It depends on the emotions and how people are really, really ready to end the marriage. Some people are not ready, and so there's a lot of back and forth that they really don't care about. It's really just emotions involved. So with divorce, as I said, there most states are no fault divorce, which just pretty much means that we don't agree. It's irreconcilable differences, and we can't reconcile. And then there are some states that do fault divorce, which you basically claim that there was something that happened the other person did that made you have to divorce. The main reason people may file for fault is to kind of get an upper hand when there's equitable distribution in the marriage, when there's some type of financial gain. But other than that, it's easier just to go the no fault route and just say that there was a breakdown in marriage. Um, Either one that you file, there is going to be an equitable distribution portion, which is basically dividing the assets and the debts of the marriage. When they divide the assets and debts, they only consider the marital coverage portion, which is the time from the time that you guys were married to the time that you are separated or the divorce complaint is filed. So a lot of times people are in a relationship for 10 years and then they get married. Unfortunately, that time that you were together for 10 years doesn't necessarily matter when it's time to separate assets and debts. It's really a matter of when you guys were married and then when you actually got divorced. Um, I'll talk a little bit more about that and if you have any questions. But with, as I said, there's alimony that comes after spousal support. And alimony is a lot of factors that the courts consider when it's alimony. It's usually financial the financial difference between the parties. Usually there's like maybe one parent that was a stay-at-home parent. So that parent may need some financial assistance to be able to sufficiently sustain their life until they can actually get back on their feet and gain whatever education they may want to get or whatever they need to be able to live. And then prenuptial agreements. Not
Big
everybody
words.
not everybody agrees with prenuptial agreements, but I think they are very important if you have some things that you are coming into the marriage with, such as any assets or debts, a business. Is definitely something that you should consider. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, you got everyone's going to get divorced. It's just a protection in regards to what's happening when, if that or were to occur. Um, so there's also domestic violence. Domestic violence is generally any mistreatment of a family member or an intimate partner. And that could be, it could be a child, it could be a woman or a man. And the abuse can be physical, sexual, verbal, emotional, or psychological. So sometimes there's only psychological violence, and some people disregard that. They think that, oh, if you don't have a black eye, or if you're not physically being harmed, it's not domestic violence. But sometimes being psychologically tortured, or being called names constantly or demeaned, that can be domestic violence in another emotional or psychological form. Again, as I said, domestic violence can affect anyone. It can be man, woman, or child. You can be black, white, Asian. You could be rich, poor. It really has no prejudice. And a lot of times people don't realize that domestic violence incidents are not isolated. Sometimes it starts off as just a yell or just a push, and most of the times it escalates. So my advice is to always, if you are in that situation, definitely seek help. Um, I did put some resources later on in the file. So I did a little bit of research. I don't know if there's anyone in here from the US and the UK. Well, I know there's people from
Yes.
the US, but I don't know
I'm
if there's
s-
anyone from the
I'm sorry,
UK.
Miss Sharp. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, we do have a diverse audience here. We have people from the UK. I see people from the Caribbean. I see people from America. There's someone calling in from Switzerland, it looks like. So yes, we have a very diverse background. So go ahead.
Okay. But just want to see if there's any questions before I proceed.
I
Yes,
do have a question, Ms. Sharp. Let's go back to child custody because I think that's very important.
Yes.
So, what factor do judges typically consider when deciding custody arrangements?
Generally, they look at the parents, the child's relationship with the parents or siblings, any extended family. They look at the stability of the parents, whether that be financially or housing stability. They look at any parental alienation. There's a lot of times where one parent just, doesn't allow the other parent to see the child, and the courts do not like that. They feel that if both parents are there, both parents want to see the child, then both parents should have access and should be able to see the child. They
Right,
also
right.
consider abuse. They consider substance abuse, or um, any uh, any incapacity of the person, mental or emotional. They consider all of those things.
Mm.
They also consider the child's preference, but it really depends on the child's age and mental stability. So usually I would say around 12-ish is when they really start considering their preference. They may talk to a child younger than that, but they don't really hold that much weight because, children at that age are, they may want,
Indecisive.
yeah, they may want ice cream every night, for dinner. So
So, do you see a preference with kids or with parents? Do you think that they gravitate to mom more than dad?
actually, no.
Okay.
Honestly, I see if both parents have been involved with the child, the children, they want both. They want, if they could be with both, they would be with both, and they generally don't want to have to choose. Um, and they don't really like having to be put in that situation. But it really depends on the history of that child with both parents.
Good, good. Let's pull some questions from the chat. Let's stay on the topic for on child custody for a second, because I think that's very important. So if we can pull some questions from the chat in regards to child custody. And I just want to make a disclaimer. When you're on the Ask Carol show, it's a safe place. You are safe on the Ask Carol show. My
Thank you so
producer
much
is
for that, Carol. We've got a question here, Tamara. Keith has asked a question. Please repeat and clarify. Child support is combination of both incomes.
Yes. So what they do is a judge actually explained this to me, one of my first hearings. And when she explained this to me, it made it so clear. So what they do is, for instance, if one parent makes 20,000, let's just start with small numbers, and the other parent makes 10,000, they combine that. So that's $30,000 of income that both parents have. With $30,000 of income, say the child support, they'll have a table of how much that child should receive based on that income. So, for instance, $30,000, that child should receive, I say, $100 a month in child support. With that, one person makes $20,000, the other person makes 10. So one person makes 2/3 of that income. So that person is responsible for 2/3 of that support. So that person, you say, let's just round, say $70, that person is responsible for it. The other person is still responsible for that other 30%. But that person may not pay that support because that person has the child. So the other person that makes the 20,000, they have to pay the support. If it was the other way around, that other person who makes 10,000 has to pay their $30 to the other person. But the idea is that the other person in that household is still paying the support. It's just paying it to the child living in the home.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Thank you so much for that. I've just got a follow-up question on the same topic there, Tamara. If you could just bear with me one moment. The question is, do you think that the courts seem to lean towards the mother for custody?
Good question.
So I think there has been a shift, I would say. In the last, I would say, decade, there has been a shift in the courts, and fathers actually exercising. I think the thing is that most women will go to court. And men don't want to go to court. They don't want to have to go. They don't want to have someone tell them what to do. They want to be able to work it out and figure it out on our own. Let's like, work it out. And then there's a lot of women that are, I want it this way, and they decide to actually file to the court. But I've seen a lot more men saying, hey, I want to file, I want to press, I want to press my rights, and I want to say, hey, I want to see my child. So I've seen a lot more men getting their custodial time and actually getting primary custody or shared custody. I've seen a lot of times where there's one parent. I actually had one case where a dad was absent for, I'm gonna say, about 5 years. So from the time the child was like 2 to 7, and he came back and wanted to have time with his child, and the mother was really hesitant, and understandably. But the way the court views it as is the child has a right to have a relationship with their parent, and no one can infringe on that right. So if he's here and he wants to have time with his child, we have to try to make that happen. Now, it may not be immediately. We're not just going to throw her over there, but we're going to try to work some things out so that they can gradually reintroduce and, build a relationship.
Very good information. Very good. Thank you so much, Ms. Sharp. In the interest of time, we're going to move on to prenup. I believe you touched on that a little bit. What exactly is prenup?
So a prenuptial agreement is an agreement that parties basically disclose all of their financial information, assets, debts, businesses, and basically write out an agreement of how they will divide it once they divorce, if that were to occur. You could also put things in there. There's clauses such as infidelity clauses. So if one person cheats on the other person, then they have to pay them a certain amount of money, or they're not entitled to something. You could also put things in there regarding custody. It's very fluid. There's form prenups that you can go off of, but you can also add in what other things you agree to. But the main things are that you completely disclosed all of your information, that this agreement is fair, it can't be completely one-sided, and that you're entering into it voluntarily. And that you also had an opportunity to speak to an attorney and have an attorney view it. A lot of people get hung up on that, and they may try to do a prenup a week before the marriage, and then they're trying to hurry up and sign it, and
Yes.
they don't have time to really view it. And unfortunately, in those situations, a prenup can become invalid, or it can be
Yes.
it can be thrown out.
So, Miss Sharp, is there repercussion if you do not disclose everything pre-marriage?
Yes. So if there are some things that if you don't disclose, there may be some repercussions in regards to how everything is divided. For instance, if there was some extra debt that someone didn't put in that may have messed up their actual debts or their income, their assets. So maybe they had some income tax debt that they didn't disclose, and that impacted their assets moving forward, that person may not be entitled to as much as they may have been had they disclosed it before.
Very good. Good information. I have a question here. What are the most important clauses to include in a prenup agreement to protect both parties?
I think the most important thing is just basically assets and debts, and also businesses.
Okay.
I think it's very important to put, if you have a business beforehand, or if you have a shared business, it's very important to put how you guys will divide that shared business once you guys divorce, because that's a lot of times divorces get hung up on a business, or how to separate the business. Another thing is that I think is important, people don't think about, is a non-compete clause in their prenup. If you have a business, you should put something in there stating that your partner, if you guys divorce, cannot start a competing business. They can't start certain. If you have daycare, they can't run and try to get another daycare in your, and basically competing, because they may have helped or learned things from you, and now they're basically going to use whatever tips and tricks you have, and so there's a non-compete clause, which I think is very important if you have a business.
Very good. Very good. Let's pull some questions from the chat in regards to prenup, if we have
Um,
any.
I've got a question here from Fiona. Fiona, do you want to just unmute for a moment just to clarify if this question is in relation to the prenup? Because the question is, are students' loan considered in debts?
Do you need to state your student loan in a prenup, or do you need to say it when you're divorcing, if you divorce, because would the other person become liable? That's what I'm trying to ask.
Yes. So student loans is, yes, a big debt that you should put in a prenup. And it is definitely something that comes up when divorce. I actually had a case, I had to do a bunch of research on it. Of course, it's state specific, but student loans, I would think that this is most likely a general rule in dividing the student loan debt. The way they look at it is, if it was something that was accrued during the marriage, then the other party may be responsible for that debt. For instance, if someone is in school to become a doctor, and the other person may have worked during that time, and And maybe once this person became a doctor, they started reaping the benefits. Now they're making the house. They have a bigger house. They are making more money. They maybe don't have to work as much. Now they're reaping the benefits of this degree. So you may be entitled to pay some of these student loans because you've been reaping the benefits, and you'll continue to reap the benefits when there are maybe equitable divisions, such as, there's maybe an alimony, or maybe there's a big, a house that has to be split. Those are a lot of benefits that you may receive from that degree. It's really sticky, but it's generally, I would say, it's anything that is incurred during the marriage would be considered, even if it's in your own name. Now, that includes credit card debt. And a lot of people think, oh, I have a credit card, it's in my name. It does not matter. If it was a credit card that was used to buy marital property or marital things for the home, then it can be considered marital debt.
Interesting. I never knew that. Very interesting information. Can we pull some more questions from the chat?
Sure. We've got another interesting question here from Michael. And the question is regarding prenups, what if that business is in an entirely different jurisdiction?
Good question.
It still would be considered. It's still something that's considered. It doesn't matter that if it's in another jurisdiction. So when you have a order or an agreement, no matter where you sign it or where it is effectuated, it will be authorized or approved through any other state or jurisdiction that you go to, unless there is another competing order. So there's something called a full and faith credit clause, which is any order from any other state will apply to any other state that you go to. So you couldn't go to Georgia and try to get a new order, and you have an order from New Jersey. They'll say, hold on, wait, you have an order from New Jersey. You need to go back and either New Jersey needs to relinquish jurisdiction, or, we need to see what that order was before we can proceed and make something here. So it is something, wherever your business is or wherever, it does not matter. It's definitely something that needs to be disclosed.
And again, the Ask Carol talk show, very, very diverse. We have people from all over the world, from the UK, from Jamaica, from the Caribbean, from Switzerland. So, Miss Sharp, do you think with the prenup, do you think it's across the board for all nations, or is it confined to just the United States? If that makes sense.
I definitely think it's something that is across the board. I think it depends on maybe social economic status on when people actually may use it. So I think a lot of people that may have more assets may use it. A lot of people that have debts aren't like, oh, let's get a prenup. It's more if you have assets and things that you want to protect. So I think it really depends on your social economic status and where what assets you have that you want to protect.
Very well, very well. Good information. Good information. Do we have any more questions from the chat in regards to prenup before Ms. Sharp moves on to her next slide?
I think, Miss Sharp, you can jump ahead and then we'll come back to the previous one, because I do have a question, but it's not in relation to the prenup. So maybe for time purpose, we'll continue and then we can go back, if that's okay.
That's fine. Okay, let me be back.
This is the Ask Carol talk show.
Sorry. Okay. So I did a little bit of research with family law in the US versus in the UK. As I said, with family law in the US, it's really more state specific. And they have general rules, but every state has its own specific laws on how they want to handle things. Where I noticed in the UK, it says that there's just the main body that they follow. There are, it says, variations of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but in regards to the UK in general, it's more unified.
Got it.
Also there's with the divorce, as I explained, there's the fault and the no fault. In the UK, it's generally no fault. They did say adultery and abandonment may be used, but with I saw was what I thought was a really good interesting fact. It says adultery only applies if committed with a member of the opposite sex. So that's the only way you can claim that in the UK. Oh wait, I went back. Um, I'm sorry, I moved forward with the custody, but I'll just move on with the financial matters. Again, says financial statements in divorce. They're generally, changes depending on the state, and they usually use equitable distribution. And then in the UK, again, the factors are probably the same, similar, such as the spouse, what their needs are, and any needs of the children, which are same in the U.S. So the biggest difference in the U.S. is their legal profession is unified. So there are only attorneys that handle cases that can handle that are representing people. And I guess in the UK, they have solicitors and barristers. I don't know if anyone has any information on that, but obviously there are two different parties that handle that. And then again, in the US, there is a federal and then there are state courts. And in the UK, it is a unified court system. Let's see. So domestic violence. I also did a little bit of research with domestic violence. As I stated, domestic violence is really it's a major problem. It seems like it's a problem all across the world, but it really varies on where people actually report it. So I noticed that in the UK, there's just more recently people have been reporting it more, or they've just been more recently taking the information. So it seems like 20%, 26% of the population in England and Wales have experienced abusive behaviors. Whereas in America, there is it says 10 million people experiencing it annually, which is about 20 people every minute. As well as, again, in both places, it can affect men, women, or children. Unfortunately, a lot of males do not report it. I've had a lot of male clients that feel intimidated and feel like they can't believe that they are actually in this situation, but it happens. And I think the biggest thing is that they're brave and that they don't want to stoop down to that level where they're hitting them back. And I think that's where the change is, where they're saying, hey, I don't want to push any further. I'm actually going to make the steps and change and actually put a stop to this and protect myself. So I also put a couple of resources for the US and the UK for domestic violence resources. This is the hotline, it's 24/7. In both the US, you can call that whether you're in the US or the UK. That number is worldwide, and they have different interpreters depending on where you are, if you would need a different language. And then there's the UK, they have a separate hotline if you want to call them directly.
Miss Sharp, you're muted. I think we're having a little technical difficulty here.
Okay.
Miss
Can you hear
Sharp?
me?
Okay, there we go. We can hear you clearly. Go ahead.
Okay. I don't know where you heard, but basically, as I said, there's several resources for everyone. I'll put those back up if anyone would like to see those resources for domestic violence. Again, I think it's very important. It can be a mother and child. It can be a boyfriend, girlfriend, siblings. I actually worked in the domestic violence unit in Philadelphia, and it's a wide range of people that experience it. And I think people should feel comfortable with actually going to get assistance and not feeling ashamed, because it happens to everyone. It does.
Yes, and domestic violence is never okay. It is never, ever okay.
And So this is also my contact information. If anyone needs me I'm in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. There's also, if anyone needs a different attorney in another state, as I said, it's state specific. So I only can practice in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. There's other attorneys that practice in multiple states. But you can also contact or look on americanbar.org, and you can look up your county's bar association. Every county has a bar association's lawyer referral service. So you can just look on that website and find your county and give them a call, and they can refer you to whatever attorney you may need. And
Awesome.
I'm going to go back just to show you the resources again. If anyone needs this, definitely should take that down. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, put your questions in the chat in regards to domestic violence, prenup, we can go back to that, or child custody. This is the Ask Carrol Talk Show. We have the brilliant and amazing Miss Sharp, attorney at law. This is some really, really good information.
Thank you.
Let's pull some more questions from the chat, Anita.
We've got a great question here from Fiona. She says, if I marry and God forbid divorce, is the home I owned prior to the marriage at risk?
Good question.
So it depends. Generally, the house that if you own the house prior to the marriage and you got married and moved into that home and lived in that home as a marital property, it then turns into a marital property, but only from the time that you were married. So for instance, if you own this home for 10 years and you guys got married and you stayed married for 5 years, if the house was whatever equity that was gained in that home within that 5 years, that other party would be entitled to. But any equity before then, they would not be entitled to. So you would have to get an appraisal, which generally you have to do with when you're doing a house anyway. But you would have to do basically a retroactive appraisal to see how much that home would have been been valued at that time. So I would suggest if you decide to marry and you have a home, you should probably get a home evaluation at that time prior to you getting married, just so you know how much that home is worth and how much equity you may have gained during that time.
Good information. Miss Sharp, here's a personal question. You can choose to answer it or not. But do you believe in what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours?
Personally, not necessarily. I think
Okay.
it depends on, as I said, what you have. I guess it depends on what you have coming into the marriage and what you actually are building off of in the marriage. But if for instance, I have my own law firm, so my husband couldn't come in and say, I'm taking half of what your law, you weren't in court with me. You didn't like, I appreciate your
You
support.
didn't
You
pass the
were
bar,
there.
right?
No, you didn't do anything. Now, if I hired you at my firm, then that may be a little bit different. But other than
Yeah.
that, yeah, no.
Understood. We're having so much fun on the Ask Carol Talk Show. This is really, really good information with the amazing Tamara Sharp, attorney at law. So let's pull some more questions from our chat.
So we've got some amazing questions here. And we're going back to child support. And Sean has asked, does child support differentiate if the child is in another state?
The courts can look at, as I said, where the parent paying support is or where the child is. Generally, the order is based on where the child lives. So one thing that is really interesting with Pennsylvania and New Jersey, we're border states, and a lot of people may live in New Jersey, work in Philly, or whatever, vice versa. In New Jersey, with child support continues until the child graduates college. In Pennsylvania, it stops at the time the child is 18 or graduates high school, whichever one is later. So a lot of times people will get a little confused because they're maybe live in Philadelphia, but the child is in New Jersey. The child and the mom is in New Jersey, and the order is in New Jersey. But so the order will continue if the child continues to go to college.
And we talk about college, you're talking about all the way to graduate college level. Your master's and post college.
Until they get their bachelor's degree.
Okay. Okay. And in the US, that's around age 22, 23, depending on what time you started. Okay, very well.
Yes.
Good information. Let's pull some more questions. This is the Ask Carol talk show.
Got one here from Terry. Terry says, "Hi, Tamara. So proud of you!" Exclamation sign. We're all so excited. Regarding spousal support during separation, how is separation determined and spousal support determined?
Yeah, so as I said, every state is different. Some states actually have a legal separation. So there's something that you can actually file with the court and say, we are separated. The court generally considers being separated, living separate and apart. Now, sometimes people are still living in the same home, but they're separated. So you can kind of prove that you're separated by, basically living separate lives, having separate, incomes, and kind of just doing everything separate, nothing really conjoined anymore at that moment. So you can kind of prove it at that point. But generally, if you're, for instance, in New Jersey, there is no legal separation. But if you go to the court and you say, hey, I'm separated, the court will take your testimony, of course, the other person's testimony, to say, are you guys separated? Are you living separate and apart? And there's a couple other factors that the court will look at to consider that. So there are people that will file for spousal support before they even file for the divorce. And at that point, you would just prove that you are separated. There's people that have been separated for about 15 years and have never filed for a divorce, and finally filed for the divorce. And now, we're trying to divide assets from 15 years ago because they just were separated.
Interesting. Interesting. So, and Miss Sharp, in regards to prenup, we're still on the topic of prenup. So what's a time frame for separation before a judge considered it a legal separation? And what's your thoughts on common law marriage?
So with the court, well, it really depends on the factors. They really consider if it's I would say about 6 months. If it's that's a general idea. But for instance, if you guys separated today and then you decide to go to, the court for spousal support tomorrow, by the time you go to court, you would have been separated for a little bit. And at that point, the court would make a determination on whether or not you guys are actually going to be separated. They really just want to make sure it's okay for you to be separated. They more want to confirm whether or not you actually are getting divorced. So the divorce is really are we getting divorced? Are you sure? Okay. Because I've had several people that have went far in a divorce and then dismissed their complaints. I think the other question was the common law.
Yes.
So common law it depends on where you are. There's not that many states that still carry common law marriage or actually recognize it. So I would just say it's best to just get the paperwork if you're going to get married. It's best to just do that.
Love wins every time. And we married for love. Love wins.
Yes.
Good information. Let's keep going with the chat, please.
You said any other questions?
Yeah, we've got a few here. So Terry's asking about spousal support. When and how does that get started?
You would basically just go to the court and file a complaint. It would be pretty much the same complaint as a child support complaint. On the there's usually a box on there that'll say like spousal support. So you basically just go to court, file paperwork. Some courts have online, but I've noticed that a lot of states or a lot of places don't have online filing for family matters. Most of the family matters you have to actually go in person to file. But it's pretty simple. All the family courts have a filing unit. You can go in there and you can file it in the office. They can give you the paperwork, or you can take it back and come back and drop it off. And you basically just file for spousal support. The court will give you a date. They'll ask for some financial information, and then when you go to court, they will, decide on whether or not there should be a spousal support and how much.
Very good. Good information. And what is considered how much? So let's say the wife makes more than the husband and she's filing for spousal support. Is that relevant to her or no?
So if she's the one that's making more money, then they would definitely not. They would consider that she's not necessarily a need, because spousal support is more of the need. It's more of a financial. Hey, I need. I can't afford to pay these bills alone. There's a lot of times when there's separation, one person has moved out of the home, and now this other person is responsible for the home, and like I need an actual order that's stating this is the support. And sometimes the spousal support is just housing expenses. It may just be more the mortgage. I need you to make sure that you pay the mortgage every month, or I need to make sure that you pay, the car note, my phone bill, or whatever the case may be. And it may not be an actual a money that's given directly to the person. It may just, as I said, be support.
Very well. Very well. This is really good information. Do we have any more questions from the chat?
So Michael is asking, going back to the question of child support. It's a really, really good question here. How is age applicable if the child took a break between high school and college? And the second part of the question says, does the support still extends to the end of college?
So
Interesting.
the first part, the support does not extend past college. The only time it would really pass is if, for instance, the child had like a severe disability, and they were like, they needed that support financially to continue. But it's very rare when that happens. It usually stops at college. It doesn't go further than that. And I'm sorry, I can't remember what the first part of the question was.
Is how is age applicable if the child took a break between high school and college?
Yeah, so it really depends on if the order stopped. So sometimes the order doesn't stop. So when the child turned 18 and they decided not to go to school, but the order continued because neither parent went to stop, because the court doesn't know if the child is going to go to school or not, or if they finish. So you have to let the court know, hey, they're of age, it's done. Or they may look at it and do a review and say, hey, wait, this child is 21, we need to cut it off. But between 18 and 21, they're not necessarily going to keep checking it unless you come in and say, hey, this child has been emancipated, they're old enough, they don't need the support, they're working. And then if they do stop and the support stops, the other person could always file and start it back up.
Very good. Very good. This is the Ask Carol Talk Show. We have the amazing Miss Sharp, attorney at law. If you're in the New Jersey or Pennsylvania areas, she practices in those two states. Please reach out to her. She is brilliant. She has a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, and a wealth of information. So her contact information is in the chat. If you're in the New Jersey or Pennsylvania area, please see attorney at law Tamara Sharp. We are moving along. We have 7 minutes on the Ask Carol Talk Show. Let's pull some more questions before we wrap up.
We've just got one more to go. If I can squeeze this one in, because I think tomorrow we want to squeeze everything out of you today. So just following up on the spousal support, what if the spouse is paying the bills in both locations, but filing spouse wants monies for daily living like food and traveling expenses?
Wow, that's
Yeah,
a good one.
yeah, so that could be the support. So that's what I said a lot. It really depends on what the support is, and what the person is requesting. So, and the financial circumstances. So, if the bills are already taken care of, but the other things are not taken care of, and the other person doesn't have the financial means to be able to to afford those things, then the other person can still be responsible for paying additional support. So it really depends on the need, and the finances.
Good point. Good point. And I just want to give a big shout out to JAS Uniform. That's JAS Uniforms, our sponsor for the Axe Carrol Talk Show today. For all your uniform supplies, scrubs, medical needs, please contact JAS Uniforms. And I am going to put that information in the chat. This is the Axe Carrol Talk Show with the amazing Tamara Sharp, a wealth of knowledge. If you need to see Tamara Sharp for any child support need, domestic violence, or prenuptial agreements, please contact her. Her information is in the chat. Alita, do we have any more questions in the chat?
That's unfortunate. That's all we have time for now.
This has been good. If you need to see Tamara Shore back on the Axe Carol Talk Show, give me some thumbs up, give me some yes. I know she's extremely busy, but we can bring her back in season 2. So if you need to see Miss Sharp back, give us some thumbs up and some yes. Alita, what are we getting in the chat?
Oh my God, we've got the yes. We say we have awesome. Thank you so much. Good show. Thank you, Miss Carol. Yes, yes. Thumbs up and more thumbs up. So, oh wow, just amazing. So much information here that,
Thank you.
so much that we could just take in. We've got some hearts, some shiny, sparkling hearts and coming up. Just simply amazing. This has been a great
Beautiful.
session.
Miss Sharp, you're in high demand.
Thank you. Thank
We
you.
need
Thank
to bring you back on
you.
season 2 of the Axe Carol Talk Show. It's been amazing, amazing, good stuff. Join us next week. Next Saturday, we have our medical team. Gonna be a good one. We have some good shows lined up on the Axe Carol Talk Show, but you don't want to miss next week. We have our nurses and the medical team coming on next Saturday on Zoom, 2 p.m. on the Axe Carol Talk Show. It's been amazing. Miss Sharp, do you have any final words for us?
No, I thank you so much for having me on here. Like I said, if you do need any assistance, you could always give me a call. I only practice in the 2 states, but I could always refer you if you're somewhere else. And definitely, please, if you are in a domestic violence situation, please do not hesitate to get assistance. You are not alone. And there are a lot of support groups out there.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I am passionate about domestic violence because I worked in that field for a little bit. So I know what it's like. Domestic violence is never, never okay. If you are in danger, seek help. If you need an attorney, contact Ms. Sharp. She will fight for you. Domestic violence is never okay. Prenup is a good way to go to secure your assets. And child custody, it's important. I think now so many of our children are suffering because they're tossed between mom and dad, and the dynamics is just so harsh on the kids. So whatever you do, love wins. Love wins every time. Make sure our children are safe. And if you felt that they're not safe, contact Mr. Mara Sharp. She will take care of your children. Thank you. so much, so much. This has been
Thank
amazing,
you.
amazing. Please reach out to Miss Sharp again for all your legal needs. She practices in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And join us on next Saturday. We have our medical team on the Ask Carol Talk Show. A big shout out to Alita, who have been amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you to all my families and friends and
Thank you.
associates, and to everyone who took the time out to join us today on the Ask Carol Show. We have the Ask Carol mug, real conversations, real impact. So last week, or was it the week before, I drank water. Do you want to know what's in my Ask Carol cup today? It's orange juice. Thank you so much. Are you ready for my rap? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Ask Carol anything, don't hold back. Real conversations on the right track. Real impact, no fluff, just fact. Ask Carol and ask attorney Tamara Sharp. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Good night.